Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of Artist Stories of Middle Georgia. I'm your host, Victor Rigoli, and I have a wonderful guest on the podcast today. I want to welcome to the podcast Brooks Dantzler. Brooks, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. We finally met just a few weeks ago, but we have some ties. Our relatives, your son, my brother. My brother taught elementary school way back when he was just getting into teaching, and your son was in his class in the fourth grade or fifth grade?
I believe it was fourth grade.
Fifth grade? Yeah. So we've got some ties there, and you and I met when I was down there at your place, the Creative Alternatives, and got to talk to Rhonda Sunshine Miller, and I got to meet you that day. But you told me a little bit about, you gave me a little bio there, and I was really impressed about how long ago that you began your art journey. And the thing that I'm learning about a lot of women is it was kind of those three things. Remember, you can be a wife and mother, you can be a nurse, or you can be a teacher. And what did you select? I select art, right? So,
right.
And here you are today. And
right.
That's great. So let's talk about you. Let's go way back. Let's talk about your beginnings, family members, those that have influenced you and helped you along this journey. So
I'll be glad to.
All righty, let's do it.
Well, I became an artist when I was 7. I made that commitment to myself when I was about 7. My grandmother, whose name was Louise Wooten Whittle, lived in Macon, grew up in Macon, originally from Russellville, Georgia, outside of Forsyth. But her dad was a farmer, sugarcane farmer, and he suffered a brain injury when the mule went around and the pole hit him in the head.
Right.
And so he brought the whole family to Macon, and there was about 8 kids in the family, and they lived in the apartments that are now condos, the Slade houses on Walnut Street. And all of the children went to Whittle School, which was one of the first public schools in Macon, Georgia. And it's in a brick. It's an architect's office now, but it's at a brick building next to Coleman Hill, and on Spring Street. And my story begins with my grandmother, because when she was a student of Miss Rosa Taylor's, they did a project where they had to go. Miss Rosa, probably in the spring, just to get the kids outside, took them to Coleman Hill and had them draw the flora and the fauna in Coleman Hill as a science project. And she found out that my grandmother was just naturally talented in drawing. And she went to her parents later and said, Louise really is very good at drawing. And I wanted to let y'all know that there's a teacher here who teaches, Miss Molly Mason, who teaches at Wesleyan on College Street. And that was back in the day when it was still there, where the post office is now. She said she's just opened a private studio, and she's working with young ladies that are artistically talented. And I'd like to recommend her for that program. She does she does the instruction out of her home studio, which was a house that was where St. Paul's Apartments is now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so it was within walking distance. And my grandfather said, well, I don't know about that, because we need the kids to be working. So when she gets a job and she wants to take lessons, I'll allow her to use some of her money. Right. So she and her sister became bookkeepers at the terminal station.
Okay.
And she did pay for her own art lessons with Miss Molly. She couldn't afford to go to Wesleyan, but she did take classical painting and drawing classes from her. And fast forward to one of the first Georgia State Fairs, and Miss Molly talked Grandma into doing I don't know how this came about, because the piece that she did for the Georgia State Fair won Best in Show. And, you would think, well, what would a young Gibson Girl era lady do for something like that?
Right.
Well, you'd think she'd do like a still life like the one that's right behind me, which she did. but also it wasn't. It was a pastel drawing of a traumatic naval battle during the Spanish-American War. And
Wow.
I had no idea the story behind that painting, why she did that. I know she did it from a photograph that was in the newspaper. And, you know, I've kind of extrapolated it out to think that maybe she had a boyfriend that was on that boat or something.
Right.
Because she was about 18, 19 years old when she did that. But she won Best in Show, and Broadus Willingham Sr., who was a businessman with Willingham Sash and Door here in Macon.
Right.
He put up an award for whoever won Best in Show that year to be able to do a full scholarship at the Art Students League in New York. And so when that happened, Miss Rosen and Grandma went to her parents and told them and said, Louise has won this full scholarship. And my grandfather listened to everything, and our great grandfather listened to everything and said, absolutely not. She's a single, young, respectable lady. She is not going to take money from any businessman for any reason. Well, had she gone, she would have been in the same group as studying there as Georgia O'Keeffe.
Really? How about that?
But her dad said no, and I didn't know anything about. I would have never known anything about this because she never mentioned it to me, even though I was working with her every summer and drawing and painting. From the time I was like 5, and when I went to school at Presbyterian College, I had a teacher that was a native New Yorker, and we had a short semester where we needed to do something that was not like a full-blown curriculum thing. And so she decided that we were also ignorant about what was going on in art. And this was in 1970. And I was, seven. Anyway, I was about 20. And she said there was like 5 of us that went. And she said, I'm taking y'all to New York. Y'all don't know anything. And so that was life-changing. And when I told my family and my dad's youngest sister, who was the baby of the family, that I was doing this, she said, well, that's where your grandmother was going to study, but she didn't ever go. And I said, what are you talking about? And she told me the story. And I said, well, Grandma never mentioned that. And she said, like if back then, if your dad said no, it meant no.
It was no. Yeah.
So anyway, I went up. I did not go up there with that knowledge. I wished I'd had that knowledge when I went up there, but still, it was a positive experience for me. And I felt like it. I kind of have this thing about, I don't think about timelines as being straight. I think about them as being dynamic, and they kind of repeat themselves until the mistakes are taken care of.
Okay.
And I felt like I was I feel like I lived her legacy. I did and that was what was driving me the whole time. When I was in art school, I was started off being, I want to be a famous artist in New York. And I went to New York, and I learned very quickly that this Georgia girl did not need to be in that big city unless she was just visiting. And I liked it, and I loved the museum access and everything, but I like being someplace like Macon.
Right.
And right now, I'm speaking to you from Milledgeville because I'm between Macon and Milledgeville.
Okay.
And this is a house that my late husband and I built at Lake Sinclair. And this is my home studio now. And I still work at the Creative Alternative sometimes, but most of my work, I'm just starting to do what I consider to be my last body of work. Because I've been in the classroom so much, I've never been able to do the studio. So that's where I am. And I'm thrilled to be doing this interview because this is my Jubilee year. In May, I'm turning 75. And
congratulations. Awesome.
I know. And so I thought, what's the best birthday present? Well, I'm just going to be an artist for the rest of my life.
There you go.
That's what I'm doing. And so you're kicking it off. And
fantastic.
And I'm glad it's being documented. But anything I can do now to encourage other young artists to not put their dream aside and just explore it to the maximum, no matter what anybody says. They need to know that there's people like me and other artists, more mature artists in the area that are totally available to be mentors and we want them to succeed. It's
Right.
not a competitive thing.
Right.
And the first thing I always tell them is, if you run into a teacher or another artist that is in competition with you, then run the other way, because
Right.
that's not the energy you need. You need
That's
people that
right.
it's a collective thing. And I base everything I do on the studio. Of course, it's instructional based because I'm a certified um, art educator, K through
Mm-hmm.
12. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was in the Bibb County school system, I taught K through 5 and then moved to high school. But in the meantime, I became because they didn't want to they wanted to split my position. So they couldn't fire me because I was certified. So they said, well, you need to split your position. So we want you to become a gifted teacher. And that was perfect. I'm so happy I became a gifted teacher. I wasn't planning on it. I
Right.
wasn't even planning on even being a teacher. I thought that was kind of like a step down from what I
Right.
was
Right.
doing. But I'm glad I did, because I got tenure and I'm able to have a small stipend, that I
Right.
can,
Right. Time.
and
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be working in the frame shop or waiting tables anymore.
Right.
But anyway, so I also found out when I became a gifted teacher, this was amazing to me. I had to learn about the different modalities of learning and neurodivergence and all that kind of thing. Well, guess who's on the autistic spectrum? Me.
Mm.
And I didn't have a clue. But that resolved a lot of things that were going on with me as I was growing up. All of a sudden, I realized why people had a problem with me. And I'm probably, I don't know, I've never been tested, but I am definitely autistic.
Okay.
And so I'll probably be one of the chattiest people that you talk to because of
I
that.
love it. I love it. No, I love it.
You
It's
get me
perfect.
on art, and you can't get me
Hey,
to shut
this is
up.
the platform for you to speak. Yes, thank you. Makes my job easier.
Well, okay.
I just get the conversation started, and I just let you tell your story. That's what we
Yeah.
want to know. Yeah, this is perfect. Yeah.
And then later I became, when I bumped up to high school, I was
Mm-hmm.
with Gail Gilbert at Skyview
Mm-hmm.
Elementary, and before she went up to Rutland. And when she did, that was right after my husband he was killed in a freak auto accident.
Oh.
And she kind of took me under her wing, but she was
Mm-hmm.
moving up to Rutland, and she said, I want you to come with me. I need an extra art teacher. And while I was up there, they sent me to become AP portfolio certified.
Okay.
So I do that level of instruction with students that are really serious about art for their future, and
Right.
at my studio. And I do that privately, or like maybe no more than 4 in a class.
Right. Right.
And
Small group. Yeah.
yeah, we need it
Yeah.
because they have to give each other critiques and do presentations and
Yeah.
all. But they can do AP level instruction without having to worry about a grade. So I get some really good work
I bet you
from that.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're not stressed out, and they have a family. We artists have to have a family.
Yeah.
Creatives of any kind have to have a
Yeah.
family.
We need that community. Yeah. Most
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
And I have to give a shout out to my husband. His name was Keith. His name is, he's still very present to me.
Right.
Um, Keith Dantzler, and he was an IT guy here. He had his own business, and he loved helping people uh, start creative entrepreneurships, and that's what he was doing before he passed away. And
Mm-hmm.
I was one of his guinea pigs,
Okay.
and because he met me when I just started my studio, and I'd started my studio in personal studio at my grandparents' house. I was living in the garage apartment to keep an eye on them, and
Mm-hmm.
they had a little storehouse in the backyard, and I turned it into a studio where I would work with 1 or 2 kids at a time after my shift at the frame shops.
Okay.
And then later, Linda Womack McFarling, who was a friend of mine that graduated from Wesleyan in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband, Mike, had commercial rental property in Macon on Forsyth Road. And he had this little strip mall that had a space in it that he hadn't been able to rent. And she decided she wanted to try doing a studio. and asked me and a couple of other ladies that she went to school with to come on board and share the space. Well, she set up a pottery studio in the back, which is very same format basically that we've got it where my studio is now. And
Right.
my studio now is my third location actually. But anyway, she started teaching adults. She came to me 6 months after and she said, I really hate teaching adults. They are so tiny. If I'm going to have to put that much energy into it, I'd much rather be on my wheel doing my porcelain. And she and Mike ended up moving to North Carolina, and she lives in the Burnsville area, and is frequently teaches at Penland. So she was my original partner, and I tell her I'm still in touch with her somewhat, but I always tell her it's all her fault. I wouldn't have been doing this, because she said, do you want to take over this operation? And I said, well, yeah, I got a good thing going here. I went from about 5 students to begin with that were grandfathered to me from Dot Brown. And Dot Brown, as you know, I think you know, is the one that started the part of the IB program, the AP art program at Central.
Okay.
And we were partners at the Creative Alternative for a bit. And I'm trying to think, there's several other artists that have Macon connections. If you haven't met them, you need to meet them, because they were around when I was. Craig Burkhalter, printmaker, he now lives in North Georgia. And I taught with Ernie Stofko Dixon. I don't know if you've met her, but she's a painter.
I know Ernie. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Ernie helped me overcome a massive obstacle that I had all the way from when I was at Rosa Taylor as a 5th grader. I had an art teacher, and I don't even remember who it was, but because she was really ineffective to me. But she told me, we were outside drawing trees on the playground, and she came up. She said, you do beautiful drawings, but your trees are terrible.
Oh, wow.
So I never drew trees from the time I was 10 until I was about 32. And and then, but when Ernie and I connected at my second location, which was on Forest Hill Road, right near the intersection of Vineville and Forest Hill. It's in a little house. We called it the Rainbow House because we painted a rainbow on the side of it.
Oh, really?
Since it was a studio. Yeah. And it's next to the ambulance.
Place I know where that's at.
I'm trying to remember the number, but it was right there. And I was there for about 3 years until my current location became available when the Girl Scouts moved to the old Camp Sarah Bailey property. Sue Chipman, who was the director, called me, and she said, I know this is kind of a weird phone call, but she said, we just decided that we're going to move the Girl Scout operations to Camp Sarah Bailey, and we need some place that trucks can bring in cookies, and we can't do it at our location there.
Right.
And I said, well, why are you calling me? And I taught her son,
Oh, okay.
I didn't know it at the time, but he was dyslexic. And she said that that the art lessons he took with me gave him confidence in the classroom, and it helped identify him as a creative person. And so he was very comfortable with himself thinking different.
That's good.
And she said, he just blossomed in your program, and I just think what you do would be fantastic in this location. So we came at it, and I talked to my husband, and after I got off, I said, just a minute. And I turned to him and I said, they want us to buy the Girl Scout Center. And at the time, to be honest, he was unemployed. And I said, we don't have that kind of money. And he goes, we're going to get that money, because he had grown up in that neighborhood and had gone there to do things when he was a young boy at the Ingleside Community Club.
Okay.
And I had been a brownie. My mother and Marion Kaufman, who was a local resident here, and her husband Gus wrote the Jewish History of Macon. And I didn't know that when she was my brownie leader, but Mother and Miss Kaufman had a troop there, and it was largely because the only other troops were just, I think, were just meeting like at the area Protestant, churches, and
Right, right.
the Jewish girls didn't want to go there. So anyway, I didn't know all that at the time, but I was a brownie in that building, and I did my first mixed media art project in the room there that's now my office.
Okay.
Uh, and I made a baby bed and bedding, like with a little blanket and a canopy and all that stuff, out of a cigar box and clothespins and spools for the feet. I still remember making that.
How about
So,
that?
so the fact that I'm even there now doing what I'm
Yeah.
doing, the kids that are coming there are doing the same thing I was doing. And so it's just, I've always felt at home there. And we actually lived there for a bit when we were building this house.
Okay.
And so that's where William and my son Lawrence spent their teenage years. And so William was constantly with me from the time in '88 when he was born at the studio. And to him, that's just normal, you know.
Mhm.
And he eventually went down to Southern and wanted to become, he wanted to major in art and music. And they wouldn't, the art department was all about it, but the music department didn't want to have anything to do with him because he didn't know how to play the piano.
Oh.
But he could play the trombone because he was in the Sugar Bear band. So
Mhm.
he could play the trombone. He could also play the tuba. He did that in middle school, and then he did trombone in elementary, tuba in middle, and then he ended up being one of the sousaphone players. They had 10 sousaphone players when he was in the Sugar Bear band,
Wow.
and they choreographed with the drum line. There was 10 tubas and there were 10 drummers, and they choreographed for the halftime shows. They choreographed a dance that they did with the drum line. It
Oh,
was
I bet it was awesome.
it
Yeah,
was fantastic. They were
I
under
bet.
Angel, but
Yeah.
that's you. If you give a child input about the fact that they are creative,
Mhm.
and they are not only a creative, they are a visionary, because William definitely is. And my son Lawrence is as well, but he's a chef. He became a certified chef, and he's working here in Macon, and I'm thrilled because I didn't think either one of them were going to ever come back to Macon.
Right.
Willie had gone to Portland, and Lawrence was in school in Denver, and I thought,
That's good.
after their dad
You
died, I
want
was
yeah.
never going to see him again. Why would they
Right.
come back here, right? But they've thrived since they've come back. And anyway, so I made sure that my kids were validated for their creativity, and they still are very visionary in what they're doing. Um, and I'm very, very proud of them. Willie has Fresh Produce Records downtown, and
Right, right.
is a DJ and a lighting man. He's actually in three. He's involved with three bands. One in Athens, one in Macon, and then there's a band out of Brooklyn that he does lights for, and they do tours every year.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm not trying to do a commercial for my kiddos,
No,
but I'm
no,
just
no.
proud
Yeah.
of them.
I know
And
you are.
and
Yeah.
the other thing that influenced my career tremendously is the fact that there is nobody in my family, my immediate family, my mom's side and my dad's side, everybody's self-employed or has been self-employed. I don't have anybody like Keith worked for Computerland for a while.
Mhm,
He
mhm.
was a manager of the Computerland store here. And that's how he kind of got into, he was already into electronics and radio and that kind of thing. And then he was fascinated by all the technology involved with personal computers. And so that's
Right.
how he got involved with Computerland.
Okay.
And then he left them when they folded. His store was still making a profit. It was one of the
Mhm.
few that was making a profit because he was a good manager. But he just started his own business. He had like a couple of businesses before he passed away,
Right.
and so that's the atmosphere and the environment that my children grew up in, and me too, because he
Yeah.
trained me how to run a business. And then my grandfather having Macon Memorial Park, that was a family operation, and
Mhm, mhm.
so we just don't know any different. And
Right, right,
I worked for pennies long enough to know that wasn't my job. I mean,
right,
I didn't
right.
like that.
Yeah.
So I have to be in a place where I can not necessarily call the shots. I don't really feel like I'm uh, CEO material. I'm
Right.
more like I like to form collaborative groups. I like to work in groups of 3, so nobody has a monopoly over the whatever's going to be going on.
Right.
And that's a model that my husband taught me. And then later, I was mentioning my relatives in California. I've got my youngest brother used to work. He went to Mercer and graduated there with a business degree, but the whole time he was working at WMAZ, and he wanted to do sound engineering, and he had the opportunity to go to California when he was about 23, and he left. He was done with Macon. There wasn't
Right.
anywhere else for him to go. So he had an opportunity to go out there. We had a relative that lived out there. And lo and behold, he ended up working. He didn't go right away. He worked in Silicon Valley for a bit, kind of like as a mailroom guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My uncle had gotten him a job through one of the companies. He was affiliated with IBM. And so he found out that, he could do an entry level job like that. Well, he hated that. And he went to a party. There's a whole little conclave, or there was at the time, from Maconites that had gone out to San Francisco, and he was connected to them. And so he went to a party, and he was talking to the wife of this friend of his, and saying he was looking for that he had a job, but he hated his job and whatever. And she said, "Well, you need to call this number." She said, "This is where I work, and we're kind of looking for some mailroom people." And she said, I think that's a good opportunity for you. And he didn't even ask her where it was. He just hated his job so badly.
Right. Right.
He didn't care. And he thought, well, he said, well, where are you working? She goes, well, I'm in a, like, kind of a secretarial pool kind of thing. So he called, and when they answered the phone, they said Lucasfilm. And this was in 1985, 86.
Wow.
So he ended up working in the mailroom for George Lucas. And it was when they were just starting to branch out and build Skywalker Ranch. And
Okay.
I went to visit him in 87, just to, see. Keith and I went out there for a Computerland conference. And so Jeff gave me the tour of, like, the Lucas empire at the time. And it was,
Wow.
and this is what it was. Lucas had come into the Marin County area, and there were a lot of empty space. And this is, I love for this to happen in Macon. There was a lot of small, like, empty commercial spaces, kind of like the one that I started off in,
Right.
on
Right.
Forsyth Road. We were located where the American Pride Bank is, and they tore it down, eventually, right across from the Arby's. But that's where my original studio was, and it was very small. But Lucas had come into areas like that in Marin County, and had turned each one of these little strip malls into a department for Lucas.
Okay.
So Jeff was in an area where in one space they had the mail room for the whole complex, or for the
Right.
whole.
Right.
And on the other side of the building was Industrial Light and Magic. And so when I went to visit him in the mail room, there was, like, all this noise, next door. And I'm like, what's
going on over it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's Industrial Light and Magic. They do all the special effects and all this kind of thing. And I said, well, can I go visit? Can I go check it out? And he goes, no, Mom, if you went over there, they'd have to kill you. And I said, but what they
You'd
were
never
doing,
leave.
no, I know what they were doing was they were filming. There's like a scene that was in the Star Trek movie where I think there was like an airship that was like diving through the San Francisco Gulf Gate Bridge. So they were filming that. That was what the noise was. I learned later.
Okay.
But yeah, and they had built the main office area for Lucas at Skywalker at the time, and I got to go out there. And then later, when I went out to visit them, there was a family wedding we had a while back, and I was able to actually go because his wife Gwen still works there, and she is a head sound supervisor for Disney. And
wow.
and I've got to brag on her because
Okay.
she just won an Oscar for F1 for being
Really?
supervisor.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
awesome.
these are the people in my family, and it's like
Yeah.
when you meet them and you talk to them, it's not like all about, hey, it's not about anything except that they love what they do and they're all
Right.
high creatives.
Right.
And at that visit, that was an important visit for me because at the time my brother had gone on. They had started off together at a very small film operation called Fantasy Films with Saul Zantz,
Mm-hmm.
and she went into, I think actually Saul Zantz started off at Skywalker, but he had his own independent film company, and she was doing work for him, and pulled Jeff in to be a transfer editor, and that gave him a leg up to get on board with Pixar, and he retired from Pixar a while back. He's 10 years younger than me,
Okay.
and he was kind of given leave because he was when Disney bought Pixar. He was one of the older guys that were working there in his 50s, So they said, "Well, we can get these younger kids to come in here and do your job, for a lot less money."
Right. Right.
So they gave him a nice package, and he was able to. He became a Lyft driver. I said, "Why are you doing that?" He said, "Because I'm tired of being in a cubicle, and I
Something
want
to
to be
do. Yeah.
outside."
Get
But
outside. Yeah.
he also was a pilot, and
Oh.
he's a guy that likes motors.
Okay.
So anyway, I went out there to visit, and I bring it up because when I was going around the campus with him, and I was looking at the workspaces and meeting some of the people that work there, 99% of them are on the spectrum, and they all have their own little spaces, and they're all doing their own little thing. And the way Pixar operated was they would not release a production from Pixar unless everyone in the company agreed that it was as good as it could ever get,
Right. Right.
from the CEO down to the head custodian or the guys that worked for him. Everybody, they had a theater in their main campus room area. It's where the cafeteria is for the group, but they'd have these previews, and they run dailies, and every day they'd ask people to come and give feedback about what they thought, that day's production. So I got to go to a screening of Toy Story 2 that he
No.
worked on. Yeah. And that was cool. And at the time that I did that, they were working on Brave. And so they had taken the whole area of that cafeteria. Is like cafeteria on the left, and offices on the right, and theater in the front, and in front of that. And they had decorated. It looked like the Great Hall of the movie Brave. It was really
Oh.
nice. So anyway, I got some glimpses about where kids can go with what they can do.
Right.
And so
Right.
now I've always done this, but I'm being very, very mindful right now of these young kids that I'm working with. And some of the brightest ones I have, the two brightest groups that I have are third graders who are visionaries. I mean, you can tell they're visually oriented. And I tell my high school kids, my favorite level of high school kid is anybody that plays soccer, because they have to do critical thinking so much. But the other thing is they do the movements in soccer automatically does cross body training.
Hmm.
And cross body training, as you probably know, also trains the brain to
Hmm.
be more complete with its thought processes. So left brain, right brain get connected when you do that physical neural connection stuff. So those are my two favorite groups. But
Okay.
I tell everybody that they're my favorite, and that I'm so glad that they are visionaries. And whether they decide to become an artist or not, they need to know how art works, and so that they can be an educated patron, and they can either use
Right.
it as if they don't use it as a vocation, it can always be an avocation. And that artists need educated folks looking at their work to buy it. So they get that. And my favorite little group I like to work with are these little 8-year-old boys, 8, 9, 10-year-old boys who are just on their journey, and they're starting to get negative feedback from either,
Right.
kids that are in class with, because that's the same time people start getting really serious about sports. Well, these boys are
Right.
never going to do sports.
Right.
And if they
Right.
do, I tell their parents, let them play soccer. And,
Yeah.
and because the thinking that goes along with it, actually any sport that is a personal best sport, especially like golf or swimming or archery or anything like that, that really jives with a visionary's, thought processes. And they only need to be competing against themselves.
Yeah.
They don't need to
Yeah.
be competing against anybody else. But they also need to be validated so that when people give them grief about being, what are you doing? You're not an artist or whatever. They do get that feedback. And it starts about then. They can I say, this is what you say. I always ask them when I start teaching, does anybody give you any grief about your art? And they all do. They all do. They say, yeah. And I'll say, well, this is what you say. I'm sorry you don't understand my thought process and why I'm doing this. I'm a visionary and I think different. But here's the thing. I'll be glad to show you what I know, and I'll teach you what I know and how I do things if you want to learn. But if not, just understand I don't think like you, and it's okay.
I love that.
Well, they have to be
Yeah.
able to say that to at least one person, and usually it's a teacher at some point. They have to be that sure of themselves to
That's
be able
right.
to, I
That's
think,
right.
be successful with it. So I have a couple of them that call me their art grandma, which is
Okay.
fun, because I feel like I'm full circle back to where I was with my grandmother. And the very first thing she ever did with me was, this is how I got introduced to art in general. I didn't have a clue she was a painter or anything like that. She was just my grandpa. But she said, come over here. She called me Susan, which is my first name. She said, Susie, come over here and sit down here at the table. I'll remember this. I was 5 or 4 or 5. I think I was 4. 1955. Yeah, I was 4. And she said, sit down here. I want to sketch you. And I said, well, what's that? What's a sketch, Grandma? Well, anyway, she did a whole series of silhouettes of our entire family. And that was the one she did of me when I was a kid. And that was my first art lesson. And I was fascinated. And then after that, she started doing drawing sessions with me when I'd go visit her in the summer. And she lived in Statesboro at that point, but had lived in Brunswick for a while. And anyway, that's how I got in. And I think that's the way everybody needs to get introduced to art. And I tell these little guys that come on board, when Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo were your age, their parents just dropped them off at some guy's studio and they just lived there until they learned art. And I said, and I can't ask you to live here, but you can come do art. And I always knew that was the best way to approach them on their art journey. And I knew I'd hit pay dirt when I had a little girl one day, definitely on the spectrum. The daughter of a former student of mine had come to a class in a camp, and she was waiting on her mom to pick her up. So she was sitting in the classroom area by herself, and we were having a teacher meeting next to that classroom with the door open because we were keeping an eye on her, and she was in there drawing away. And all of a sudden, I just heard her go, oh, this place is heaven. When I die, this is what I want it to be like.
Oh,
heaven. And well,
how
I
about
don't know
that?
how much of that was about the art or more about the fact that she was the oldest of like 3 and they weren't there.
Yeah. That can be heaven. Yeah.
I mean, when I heard that, like, wow.
Right.
So I feel like I'm still cooking with gas because one of my newest students, who's a little 8-year-old boy, came on board this spring, and he was on school break, and his mom said, he said, well, what do you want to do today? Do you want to go hang out with your grandma or you want to go to Miss Brooks? And he goes, duh, Mom, Miss Brooks. And I know his grandma, and I told him, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So It's going on. It's been I've been teaching for 50 years. Wow. I can't believe it.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's gone by fast for you.
It's still going by, and I'm just still freaking out.
It's like going. Yeah.
Just one day at a time.
One day at a time. One student at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you talked about a studio back a little bit ago on Forsyth, out on Forsyth Road,
Right.
across from, I guess, where Idlehour Country Club and that area is.
Yeah.
Was that around during the early '80s, like
We
80,
start.
81
Yeah.
time
Creative
period?
Alternative was started in 1979.
Okay,
And it was just this idea, this guy had a vacant commercial space and he couldn't rent it to anybody else, so he rented it to us for dirt cheap, thank goodness, or we couldn't have done it. And then when my friend Linda backed out and started she built a home studio at her parents' house.
mm,
And we were there, and two of the other girls went away, and we really kind of needed to expand. There wasn't. I had several other art. Ernie was working with me there then, and so was Craig Burkhalter, and another lady who's unfortunately passed, Pat Mueller. All of us were working out of that little space,
okay,
and we found out that this space up on Forest Hill was available, and so we used that for a while. But the only thing that was when they started talking about they were going to widen Forest Hill, you
right,
know, and I think they finally got around to it this year or something. But it was dangerous for the kids getting in and out
right,
of
right.
their cars. And so my husband Keith and I had talked about that. That we needed to find a space that was kid friendly and that was off the bait, the traffic. We just
Right,
didn't. We
right,
wanted to have a pickup zone,
right.
and he had been in construction for a bit, and he was thinking we just build like a kind of a warehouse space that, somewhere, we get some property somewhere. We weren't thinking we would do it when we did it, which was about 1985. That's when
Okay,
the Girl Scouts contacted us.
okay.
But all that building really kind of fit the bill because it's off the beaten track, and I love the fact that it's down in the woods next to Burns Park. So we use the wooded area around us as a teaching area, and I'm a master gardener. I can't really do the physical stuff anymore, but I'm really into like butterfly pollinator gardens and stuff
Mhm,
like that.
mhm,
So
mhm.
we're trying to set that space up as an outdoor classroom. I mean, we've always used it as an outdoor classroom, and we do have a little path that goes from the park to our building.
Okay.
And yeah, and so the kids love it. We call it it's about an acre and a third, and we call it the 1 acre wood because
Oh,
in not in 80 from 86 to 95 we actually had a half day preschool program there. And my husband, this was one of the things that my husband contributed tremendously to. I happened to run into a good friend of mine that I'd gone to high school with that was a kindergarten teacher, and
mhm.
her specialty was curriculum at the time. And we met at the Kroger that used to be on Riverside, where that gym is now. And we were in the meat department, and she says, "What are you doing?" And I told her. She said, "Have you ever thought about having a preschool that was fine arts oriented?" I said, "No, but that's a brilliant idea
Mhm.
because I had Lawrence and he was about 3, and I had not, and William wasn't even born yet, but she had 2 girls one of them still lives in the area, she wanted to have that kind of thing going on for them. So there was a whole group of us. There was me and Peggy, her name is Peggy Alford Joyner, and she actually is kind of near me up at the lake now.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and I see her periodically. But it was her. She came on as director. I said, well, if you'll do the curriculum for the preschool, I'll be more than happy to do like the fine art curriculum. So we decided we needed to have the program was set up so that we would have regular preschool readiness instruction most of the day, and they would have plenty of outside time, and they would also have, though, 30 minutes each day they were there of either a music, art, dance, or drama class. So it was my job to find the teachers that would be able to handle that. Well, lo and behold, because I was the mother of a toddler and I was a creative, and I loved being I got married to have kids because I wanted my babies, but it pigeonholes you. You don't really
Right,
have a lot of a network. But
right.
anyway, there were all of these people the same way. And some of those people that you probably know, and probably, I mean, I may want to interview at some point, Sylvia Haney.
Okay.
Was did theater and drama. She did drama and music for us, and then I had a couple. Robin Irvin was one of our first dance teachers, and we actually have a little dance studio up there that's with the mirrors and everything for the kids to learn movement. And then other people that worked there were Kathleen Miller and Karen Sullivan Kite. Karen's now in St. Augustine, and I'm not sure where Kathleen is now. But Cindy Cheney Little, who had Flag City School of Dance,
Uh-huh.
she taught for us.
Okay.
We all had young kids, so we created the program for our children because we wanted them
Right.
to be
Right.
introduced to the fine arts early on.
Right.
But as you know, and I know Neil knows, the fine arts are the best way to teach sensory learning.
Mm-hmm.
And at the preschool level, that's how kids need to learn. And so we did that. And then my husband got on the bandwagon, and that was when he was working at Computerland, and he got us a deal on some Compact Junior computers.
Okay.
So we had a computer area, and for these 3, 4, and 5-year-olds.
Wow.
And, a lot of the kids that have gone through that program, including my children, went on to really be successful in academics. And I can't take all of
Right.
the
Right.
credit for that, but it was
Right.
because their parents were really seeking that for their children. And again, I had a lot of international parents. A few, I mean, not a whole lot, but we had a maximum. We had about 36 kids in the program, and but there was a lot of people from the international community that liked our program because the only other preschools available were the church preschools,
Right.
and their faith was different. So we had probably one of the we came together as moms that were creative, and we wanted our kids to be creative. And we didn't think about the diversity of it, but it was probably one of the most diverse programs at that time, from 86 to 96.
Wow.
And the only reason we terminated it was because of the free lottery-funded 4K and 5K.
Right.
Now, that program morphed into what is now our summer camp program, because we started the summer camps at that time. And I know I sent you a photo of one of our more spectacular dubbing ceremonies that we do at the medieval
We'll
camp.
show that in just a few minutes. Yeah.
And that's been our longest running and one of our most popular camps. And there was a whole agenda for the kids on that too. But it's fun. Everything we do is immersive. And we try to incorporate the music and the art and the role play and all that stuff in everything we do. And that's one of the reasons I really love working with Rhonda.
Right.
Because she didn't grow up here, but when she was in the New York area, in New Jersey, where she lived when she was growing up, her adults made sure she was enrolled in some pretty spectacular programs up there. So she's got a pretty diverse experience.
Right.
And she says, well, I wasn't trained as an artist. I'm like, yes, you were, sweetie. It just happened when you were little and you didn't know that was happening.
Right.
So we get along great. And we both are mothers of 2 sons that are creative. Yeah. And she's also has a daughter. I never raised a girl. So, I have to adopt all my daughters. But I do have 2 power-packed little granddaughters that are one's at Springdale, one's at Ace. And so anyway.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's happening.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to pull in some of the artwork and some of the pictures. And you and I kind of went through them before the interview started. But there's a lot of history in the first couple or so photos. And so I'm going to bring those on here so you can talk about these.
Okay.
And you had said earlier before we got started and recording that this is where it all began, so to speak.
It is. This is the studio of Miss Molly Mason, who was the art professor at Wesleyan College for Women when it was based on College Street, where the new, I call it the new post office is now.
Right.
And and anybody that's ever, like, I had actually had my first art lesson there because it was the original location of the Museum of Arts and Sciences. And so it was probably around 61, like 1960 or 61, when I was in
Hmm.
fourth or fifth grade. I took a little class there, and I remember the project I did was a crayon batik of a fish. And I drew it in crayon and then painted over it with watercolor. And it was like, whoa, you know. So that's technically mixed media, you know.
Yeah.
But I'd only been shown how to do pencil and charcoal drawing with my grandmother. That's all I knew, and which is really kind of like the alphabet of art. So so I had some previous instruction, and she was my only art teacher that I really got along with. It wasn't because I just the teachers that I had, and I didn't really have anybody except volunteers that were folks that were artists. That they weren't. They had been trained by very hardcore people. Well,
Right.
Miss Molly wasn't hardcore, but she was determined to make sure. What I've learned in the over time is the fact that I know Miss Molly, I'm sure Miss Molly, and I know Miss Rosa were firm suffragettes, and neither of them ever married because they were teachers, and back then you weren't allowed to marry if you were a teacher. You had to commit yourself to the educational field,
All right.
and if you did get married or got pregnant while you were teaching, then you were immediately dismissed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm serious, and any young girls that are listening to me right now, be thankful for people like those,
Exactly.
because they were the pioneers. And but anyway, Miss Molly started this studio so that young women could have the benefits of true classical instruction. And it was around the same time that they started having, the public schools were coming on board, and Miss Rosa was one of the first public school teachers that were hired in Macon, and that was a long haul for her too. But that's a whole nother story. But how she got to be in the school system. But anyway, Miss Molly made sure that she liked working with my grandmother, and she she did this. I think I mentioned that the grandma had won an award
Right.
after
Right.
instruction with Miss Molly, best in show at the Georgia State Fair when it was in Macon, and
Hmm.
that was the happening thing. And but she had done this pastel drawing of a naval battle, the Spanish American War. And I really don't know why she did that particular subject, but she did win Best in Show. I'm thinking she might have known somebody that was deployed or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
And anyway, I never heard that story from her. And the only reason I even found out about it was when I was going to Presbyterian College in the 70s. I was given an opportunity to study at the Art Students League, and for a month, for a short semester. And I told my aunt, who was my dad's youngest sister. He had four sisters and a brother. And she said, "Oh, well, that's where your grandmother was given a scholarship." I said, "Really?" I said, "She never mentioned it." I said, "When did she go?" And she said, "Well, she didn't." And I'm like, "Why not?" And my aunt Ida said, "Well, when Miss Rosa and Miss Molly took her to her parents' house and said went to her parents' house and said she had won this award, and told them that it involved a full scholarship to the Art Students League, and they just needed her parents' permission for her to go." And her father said, "Absolutely not.
Mm,
That's not a respectable thing for her to be doing as a young woman. You don't. She's not going to accept any kind of money from any making businessman to do anything."
right. Right.
And I told my aunt, I said, wasn't she upset? And she goes, "No, because back then, if your father told you you weren't going to do something, you didn't do it."
Yeah.
Well, subsequently, a couple of years later, she married my grandfather, who was a railroad agent, and she had met through when being a bookkeeper at Terminal Station, which was how she was affording her. She had to pay for her own art lessons.
Mm.
and couldn't afford to go to Wesleyan and study with Miss Molly, so she took the private lessons instead. And I think it was right after that happened, she got married and had all these kids. But she made sure that all of the children and her grandchildren knew how to draw, and so she never gave up her art her entire life. And
Right.
she passed away in like 72,
Mm.
and in 1972.
Okay.
And anyway, but yeah, so I feel like when I was given the opportunity, I didn't realize it at the time. I wished I had, but at the time, after the fact, I realized I was living the legacy that she never got to do,
Right.
and that really fueled the rest of my time at the creative. I mean, probably is one of the main triggers of me even doing what I'm doing at the Creative Alternative,
Right.
because I
Right.
realized how important it is
Yeah.
that kids be given an opportunity. And so there's that. And
Okay.
so, yeah, she's very present in my life, obviously. And I happen to actually look exactly like her now.
Oh, wow. How about that? How
Yeah, and
about
I
that?
wish her picture was in here because you can see that. And I do have
Yeah.
a picture of her when she was younger, and I do look just like her.
Wow. How about that?
So anyway, but yeah, I know that I have to carry that forward, and my
You
kids know
do?
that as
Yeah.
well.
That's right.
Yeah.
For sure.
So.
Tell us about this article that was in the Macon News way back in the day.
Well, that was when I was 5 years old, and that was my mom. And my mom's name was Betty Swallam Whittle Sheehan, and she was another one in our family that ended up being self-employed and self-motivated. And she actually was partners with a lady here named Helen Walker Nolan, who the two of them started Father Goose Toys here,
Hmm.
and she was the chatty one, just like me, and really enjoyed doing that. But when we moved back to Macon, we moved. My dad had gone to the Naval Academy. He was actually like a couple of years behind Jimmy Carter,
Oh,
and he graduated in 1950, and I came along in 1951 when my parents were living in Key West. They were based in Key West, so I was born in Key West
wow.
at the Naval Hospital there, and then he was on the fast track to become a Navy pilot, and he went to school in Pensacola, and he went to school in Corpus Christi, and we were in Norfolk, Virginia, and living in Portsmouth when my brother Blaine, who's in the picture too, when he was born. And in 1956, my grandfather whose name was Emmons Blaine Swallam, and he owned Macon Memorial Park at that
Hmm.
time. But he had suffered a heart attack and did not have any male heirs. But
Hmm.
he had two son-in-laws who were both military trained. And my father, being a Navy lieutenant, was outranked by his brother-in-law, my uncle Bertram Witham, who was a colonel in the Air Force. And my uncle Bert actually was stationed at that time in, I believe they were in Wiesbaden, Germany, and he had been acting as an aide to President Eisenhower after World War II.
Hmm.
So he outranked my dad, and he was involved. So my dad was just starting his career, but he came home to help my grandfather in that business. And unfortunately, it ended up being a really good choice because later in the 70s, he was diagnosed with MS.
Hmm.
And so my mother was his caregiver, and but she was busy. And during that time, it was after he passed in 1981, and that was when she started doing the toy thing. But before he passed away, they were members at River North Country Club, and she got with at the time the golf pro was Jim Hickman, and
Hmm.
they started a golf tournament for MS to raise money for
Oh,
MS, and it was so successful that it actually was on the Ben Hogan tour for a few years.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so that was her, and my mother was a visionary that was never validated because she was a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I know there's a couple of things that I've learned from her was never put your dream on the shelf.
Right.
And then the other thing was being autistic. I was, I was having problems with my social skills, I'm sure, and because I'm just real out there, and my friends say if it comes in your head, it's going to come out your mouth, and I'm like, no, I don't know. But she was always trying to modulate my behavior.
I hear you.
And I tell people all the time that when I was growing up, we had a wonderful lady who I call my mom. She was my mom, Rosa May Rutland Ross, and she raised me. And in my scenario growing up was I was that little fat girl that Abilene took care of in the help.
Oh, how about
We
that?
we were Abilene and that little girl,
Wow.
and they were trying to rein me in because I wasn't a feral kid. I was probably as feral as you could get in the
Okay.
50s.
Okay.
but but yeah,
Yeah.
but she civilized. They both civilized me. It took both of them.
Okay. Wow.
Plus another friend of hers. My mom's best friend was Jean Fincher, Jean Wiggins Fincher, who actually started the art program at FPD, and she was my aunt Jean, and we weren't really related, but she was a creative. She had trained at she was an art major at at Mercer, excuse me, and she also had worked for Ernest Red, who was an interior designer here. So whenever my mom and I would butt heads, she'd go, Betty, just send her over to me, and I'd go and we do an arts or craft project or something like that. So and my mom was like, I just don't know what to do with her. And so I mean it was definitely a village that took
Yeah.
care of
Wow.
me and raised me up and
That's
celebrated
good.
my art.
Yeah.
Mother was
That's
always
good.
baffled by my art talent, and she kept even the whole time I was running the preschool and everything, she was like, I just wish you could do art as a hobby. And I'm like, Mom,
Wow. Yeah.
I
No,
got to do it. I got to do it to this level.
that's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
That's right.
so it's a journey, and
Here
there I
you are in your younger days. Is that
yeah.
that frame shop there?
That was the location where the framery
Hmm.
used to be in Ingleside, and we were in the space that eventually became Art on the Avenue, and then later became Studio Gallery. And
Okay.
but when I worked there, it was owned by a group out of Binders in Atlanta, and it was really a way to sell discount framing, and I think it was a tax write-off for the Binder Corporation. But
Okay.
they hired me and one of my good friends, Beth Dasher Green, to come in as she was manager. She got hired as manager, and I was miserable working at Penny's. I was selling baby clothes and menswear, and it was at the time it was when the mall opened,
Okay.
and uh, the job wasn't so bad. What was bad to me, being on the spectrum, was all of the sensory input in the mall at that time. It was just like unbearable,
Yeah.
because of the lights.
Overload.
It
Hmm.
was terrible. And so, and she didn't know that. Beth didn't know that, but we had been besties in high school. We went to the A.L. Miller Senior High for girls
Okay.
and graduated. We were the last class to graduate, all girls,
Okay.
and we had been integrated racially, but not by gender.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a strange experience, but I was glad I had it because I got to have some black friends before I graduated from high school,
Right.
and I would not have had that happen otherwise.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Beth called me and she said, at work. And I said, Beth, I can't talk to you. I'm at work. She says, yes, you can, because I'm offering you a job. And I said, what? I want you to be assistant manager of the frame shop. And I'm like, okay, and that was when I was footloose and fancy free and unattached and could kind of move like
Right.
that.
Right.
And so I did, and it was love. I worked there for a couple of years, and actually, one of our framers was Doc Holliday when he was an art major at Mercer, and
Okay.
he came in as a sub for one of our guys that chopped the frames to make the custom frames,
Uh-huh.
and that's how I got to know him. I'd known his sister for a while, but that's how I got to know him, and he's now my dentist, and so I see him on a regular basis. But he was a student of Marshall Daughtery's, and Marshall actually was my late husband's ex father-in-law, and I met him, and Keith was still on good terms with him when we married, and Marshall was a big supporter of the creative alternative. I mean, he thought what we were doing was awesome, and along with a couple of other artists in the area, in the neighborhood, actually. Um, when I moved over to Riley Avenue, which is where we are now, Hauser Smith was another one that just really
Okay. Yeah.
celebrated us, and of course Mark
Yeah.
Ballard. He taught Mark Ballard and Craig Hamilton and Ray Snyder.
Right.
And Ray Snyder and I teach the portfolio class now at my studio. Um, so there's still a lot of us around,
Yeah.
but we kind of dial back and just do our own thing. And but that's why I was agreed to be on the podcast because this is not my jam. I don't really. However, I know it's very necessary, and I'm gonna. Can I put in a word just
Sure.
specifically to the studio artists here in Macon,
Yes.
guys? Don't be shy about spreading the word. I said we got some new kids in town like Mama Hawk and Rhonda Miller, and then her son Isaiah Miller teaches sewing at my place.
Right. Right.
Y'all are the ones that are going to make it happen for the art scene
The
here.
future. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because the music scene got it down,
Yeah.
and it's because they're performers. We're not performers.
Right.
We are presenters, but we need to get better at performing and getting the word out there about who's in Macon doing what.
Right. Right.
Because here's the untold story. Macon is home to many and has been home for years to many world class artists, and we need to get more visible, and it's going to take us to do it. So
Right.
I'm doing my part,
I'm
and
trying to do my part. I tell
well,
you.
what I'm going to tell them if they're watching this that they need to call you as ASAP
That's
and
right.
give you their story.
Yes.
And that's how this. You're the vehicle that's going to make it happen, but
Well,
they need to
thank you.
embrace it and do. And you are. We've
Well, I
been needing.
appreciate that very much. I tell you what, this is one of the reasons I do this. I thoroughly enjoy it, but I love telling the stories and building that community that we so desperately need, and getting the word out about these wonderful artists that young and old. I don't
Mhm.
care how old you are. You can be 9 or 99. It doesn't matter. We
And we
want to
got a
hear your
few more
story.
coming up. And I look back
Yeah.
over my 50 years of instruction, and I'm thinking about kids that I worked with back in the day when they were
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
And that would include some of them went into theater, like Carrie Preston was one of my former art students, and she now is in a CBS show called Elspeth, which is a spinoff of
Oh.
Goodwill. She's got the lead. And that, if you hadn't seen that show, it's hilarious. And Carrie is acting. She's channeling a lot of the characters that she grew up around in Macon. And
Wow. How about that?
her husband Michael is on it as well. And his credentials come from things like Person of Interest, and
Hmm.
that was one of the shows he was in. And he also, I think his launch was as the villain in Lost. So he likes to play villains, but
Okay.
they're delightful, and they were actually married by Jim Crisp at Theater Macon.
How
So
about
back in the
that?
day, but the other kids I got to give a shout out to Ben Dunn, who was the first director at the McEachern. When he was 3 and when he was in preschool with me, I was the one that was responsible for getting him away from the easel to come to circle time because he never wanted to do anything except paint. and he's now a degreed professor in Atlanta,
Mm.
and I think he taught at Mercer for a bit. And now Johnny Cohen coming in there. I didn't teach Johnny directly, but his two brothers were in our preschool program,
Okay.
and I'm sure he picked up a lot of. And his mom has always been just very Beth. She's wonderful, and she just made sure that those guys were exposed to art and everything. But he's now the director at the McEachern, so
That's right. That's
I
right.
feel that's a coup. And then also the guy right now that's really hitting the big time is Gray Henson. He went through our dance program at the preschool and discovered he was a dancer, and he just finished. He's in a show right now on Broadway called Bigfoot, and he's got the lead because he's really tall, and he's got this huge presence. He's wonderful, and his personality's that big too. But he was in other Broadway productions like Mean Girls. He was like the boy. He was Damien, and then he also was in Shucks. He had a part in the show Shucks, and then of course Sylvia's boys, JP and F. Michael. They're both seasoned Broadway people,
Right.
and like F. Michael was, I know he had a part as Boss in The Wiz, and so we're not talking about people that are just kind of like doing this for fun. We're
Right.
talking about
Right.
serious professionals that are coming out of Macon, Georgia.
They run through Macon on
They
to
do.
their
There's something
careers.
here.
Yeah.
They say it's in the water. I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway.
Perfect.
So anyway, so you want to
Let's
talk about my
Yeah,
art?
I want to talk about your art here. Let's talk about these two pieces. Tell us a little bit about the one on the left there.
The one on the left, I did for my daughter-in-law, Candace Dantzler, and she is a special ed teacher that works at Woodfield Academy, and she works with a lot of kids on the spectrum, and I love her dearly because of that, but also because she is the mother of my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And so this is what I do on commission. I really
Mhm.
only work on commission.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
And
Yeah.
what I do is people need to contact me if they need something done. And I can say, after teaching drawing for 50 years, I can draw anything. And I tell my kids that. So give me a challenge and I can draw it. And
Right.
if I can't do it immediately, I will figure out how to do it. So anyway, this piece is one of my what I call my birth flower portrait series. And this is the entire family represented in birth flowers.
Hmm.
And my daughter-in-law Candace is a July birthday, and she is a water lily. And the poppy next to her is my baby granddaughter Penelope, also referred to as Pip. She's 10, and she's an August poppy. And the blue flowers behind her are her brother Jackson, who's 15. He's a student at ACE and a really good soccer player. And next to him is the orange flowers. There are his brother Keith, who's 16, and he's at Howard now, but I think we'll probably be moving on. And he's in ROTC right now
Okay.
at Howard, and he's a drone guy. That's what he's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
looking into that. And then the narcissus, the little white flowers there, is my adopted granddaughter, Evelyn. And she's 13, and she just made cheer squad at ACE, so I'm real proud of her.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lifelong dream for her.
Good.
And then behind them, that iris is my son Lawrence, and he's my son that's the chef, and he works with 551 Hospitality Group here.
Okay.
And he supervises Mulgy Brew Pub and Grits in Forsyth.
Hmm.
And then down at the bottom there, the Lady of the the Lily of the Valley. That's me.
Okay.
And the violet is my current sweetie.
Okay. All
Don
right.
Williams. But Don was trained as a jazz drummer by Steve Chanin. So. And he had a degree in music from as a minor he was an English major and a music minor at Mercer.
Great.
Anyway,
Awesome.
so that's the whole family. And
Good.
the scene, well, I had to put the river in there because of, Macon, but
Right. Right.
it's an imaginary landscape, but it incorporates the river in Macon and the mountains of Colorado because
Gotcha.
that's where Candace and Lawrence lived when Keith began.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and then the one on the right is from a series of block. When I went to the Art Students League, I studied printmaking, and this is from a while ago, but I just love this piece. It was based on a detail from a Renaissance painting of a laughing
Mm-hmm.
angel, and I've just always loved it. So I did this as a linoleum cut, and this is kind of like the original print, but I've done several prints for friends and family, and I'll hand watercolor those.
Okay.
So I like my preference is I like to do classical drawing type realistic stuff.
Right.
I
Right.
do work from photographs, and if somebody contacts me about a birth flower thing, I'll just say, okay, give me the months of
Mm-hmm.
everybody you want included,
Mm-hmm.
and then do you want me to do like a bouquet, like a vase of flowers, or do you want like a still life, or do you want me to set it in a scene?
Right.
And,
Right.
they'll say,
Okay.
well, a lot of times they'll have like an old home place. They'll have photographs of an old home place that no longer exists, and I'll do the garden in the front of the home place, and it's a way to rep. I tell people, I said this is one of the best ways to have a family portrait because everybody looks gorgeous, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't even have to still be around, to have
Right. Right.
picture made, and it can include
Right.
everybody. And there was another picture I sent you that was a watercolor I did like this, which was the first one I
Okay.
did for my grandmother, my mother's mother.
Okay.
Um, when I
Well,
got I
is
got
the one
married
on? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go
when
ahead.
I got married at her house in 1982. In the side garden, I did that for her, and it was like for her 90 something
Oh,
birthday.
okay. Okay.
And anyway,
All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt you.
no. I was going to ask the one on the left. What's the medium there? Is that watercolor? Is it
It's
acrylic or?
It starts out as graphite,
Okay.
and then I will. Some of it's watercolor, some of it's colored pencil, and some of it is gouache.
Oh, okay.
And then I go back after I do the colors, and then I'll go back and I'll do detailing with ink.
Gotcha.
So it's a
Gotcha.
combination
Yeah.
of things. And it's really funny because it was not too long ago when I was at the studio, I was bemoaning the fact that I was talking to Ray Schneider, and I said, I just really feel bad because I've spent all this time teaching, 50 years teaching. I haven't really created a body of work. I just don't feel like I'm painting enough. And he goes, Brooke,
Right.
you're not a painter. I was trained as a painter at UGA.
Yeah.
He said, you're not a painter, you're an illustrator. Well, the minute he said that, it was kind of like something clicked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I started doing, I mean, I've been doing the birth flowers for quite a while, but I started incorporating the ink into it for the first time. And I've since that time done, I have a whole series of, I was asked to do a show at Grants for GABA one time for the
Uh-huh.
GABA Fest. And so I thought, what can I do? What can I do? And I'm really into botanicals, like my grandmother was. She used to do camellia portraits for people, and
Mm.
I do that too. But also, like I thought, what can I do for GABA? I thought
Yeah.
mushrooms. So I researched all the different kinds of mushrooms there are out there, um, psilocybin mushrooms, of course, and I did a whole series of mushrooms.
How about that?
So I'm planning on. I have those, and I have individual birth flower images that some people have actually used for tattoos, and I know that that's what I prefer to do. I like working small,
Right.
and actually, a year ago, this month, I actually fell at the lake and broke my leg.
Oh man.
So it was a blessing, and I'm fine now. And I'm not
Good.
quite as mobile as I used to be, but I'm still fine. I can still move around. And but when I did that, and I was in the hospital for so long, I thought that's depressing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially for somebody that was as active as me. And I thought, what can I do to keep myself from being depressed? Well, fortunately, I had already been working for about a year or so with Rhonda Miller, who was a breast cancer survivor, and she survived
Mm-hmm.
breast cancer because of her painting. And so I just took that little, idea at hand and started doing my drawings. And so now I'm involved with a group that's out of England that is it's just a bunch of people that there's a guy over there that owns an art shop called the Artery, and he's in oh gosh, Yorkshire or somewhere. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
he does this thing and he sells art supplies, but he also does art lessons like I do. And he's got kind of a similar philosophy to mine. And I found him when I was in the hospital, and he had started doing this thing, which was a drawing a day.
Oh
And
yeah.
so he
Yeah.
does like a prompt for every month, for a whole
Uh-huh.
month. And so there's no time frame, there's no specific media you use. You just do it. If you see a
Right.
prompt and you want to do it, you just do it. And then he just asks you to post it on his site
Right.
I think it's called Barry's Drawing a Day Challenge or something like that.
Okay.
But it's like a group of artists that just enjoy what they're doing. And some people are very seasoned, more seasoned than me, and then other people are just getting into it. And we share ideas and we give each other support. And so this is a collaborative group that I'm involved in England, and I hope to visit them sometime. Oh
Good.
yeah, this one on the left here was a figure study I did. It was the challenge for that one was in a workshop that I took at the Middle Georgia Art Association with Scott Deuce, who
Okay.
he used to teach at Wesleyan, but at the time he did this, I think he was teaching in New York, and he was just down in Macon and did this workshop. It was oil painting, and I had not done oil painting for so long. This particular piece I had hanging at the studio, and one of the guitar students came in, who's a singer songwriter, and was going to visit. I mean, to see Terry Cantwell, who teaches guitar and piano with us. And
Mm-hmm.
he walked in I was sitting there when he walked in, right next to it, and he goes, "Did you do that piece?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "I want to buy it," and I'm like, "Okay." And I don't know he said it. He said it was a song. He said he saw
Oh,
that. He said, "This is a song." And he asked me, who the girl was. I said, "I don't know who the girl was. She was a model."
right.
And the problem was he had done a setup with Primary Colors. So that's the name of the piece is Primary Colors.
Gotcha.
And it was a study, and it was about 8 by 10. Most of my works are 8 by 10. The
Uh-huh.
biggest work I do is a 16 by 20.
Okay. Okay.
And this piece here, the other piece with the roses, that was the one I did for my grandmother Swallam, who lived across from Macon Memorial Park
Mm-hmm.
and had a beautiful house that was a Gatsby era house, and that's where I was married in '82. And I carried the lavender roses as my bouquet, and then her birth flower was also a poppy. My mom was a daffodil, and I have my brother in there as he's an Aquarius. I mean, he's a February violet, and that was my very first one I ever did,
Oh wow.
and I've still got that one. And right now, I'm working on a commission for a friend of mine who is originally from England, and she just became an American citizen. So yay!
Congratulations. Yeah,
But
that's great.
yeah, Shelley asked me to do a piece for her sister's wedding, which is
Oh, okay.
be on April 22nd, and
Okay.
I've just started it. She said there's no time frame.
Okay. I was gonna say you're running out of time if you're
No,
got
no,
another week. So
she
yeah.
just recently commissioned me to do
Okay. Oh,
this.
okay.
She's going to send her sister a piece that she had done of their mother,
Oh,
because Shelley takes painting from Ray Snyder, and I'm trying to encourage her to start teaching oil painting with us because she was trained
okay.
as an oil painter when she grew up in England.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so she wanted that's why I
Well,
had
good.
that picture available, because that's the effect she wants, and I'm
Right.
going to
Right.
do that soon. But
Good. Good.
Anyway, oh yeah,
These are the last two.
yeah.
You talked a little bit about the one on the left, or something with the summertime workshop stuff,
We have
maybe.
summer camps all
Okay,
summer,
summer camp. Hmm.
and we're going to offer them this year from the week of June the 1st through the week of July 30. The last day is July 31st, and we usually offer. We usually take the 4th of July week off, but
Uh-huh.
my current project is I'm trying to develop a camp that's going to be specific, and I'm working with Candace on this. And we've got two other moms that are involved with the studio that have experience working with kids on the spectrum. So what we want to do is offer a small group class camp, probably during the 4th of July week, for kids on the spectrum, and we want to model it after the with the fine arts focus, like we did with the preschool. And,
Uh-huh.
and if it goes as well as I think it might go, that will become a permanent part of our offerings. And one of the girls, Candace, of course, is certified. She graduated from MGA, and she was in the first group to graduate from MGA that got their degree in exceptional child and also elementary ed. And she's taught in several schools in the area and is currently at Woodfield. But the other two ladies I'm talking to, one lady is an instructional coach that works specifically with autistic children, and the other one is a mom of one of our regular campers who is in the Bibb County school system and is actually is a YouTube uh, presence as twice exceptional mom, because
Okay.
she has two children on the. Both of these ladies have two children on the spectrum that are nonverbal, and the lady that's twice exceptional mom actually. One of her children is nonverbal, and the other one is overly verbal, like me.
Hmm.
So I love working with her, and I'm trying to. I told you I like to work in groups of three,
Right.
because and I found out later that that's kind of the way they do things. George Lucas has a foundation, and by the way, my birthday's the 15th of May, and his is the 16th of May. So there's in Rhonda's is the 13th of May. So I think there's something to be said for Tarians
Okay.
being in creative fields, but. He has Edutopia. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Mm-mm.
program,
Mm-mm.
but that came out of Lucasfilm, and it's an educational program that's is creatively based, and so I refer to that a lot. And I noticed that that's kind of what I do at the studio. We were already doing, but it's kind of dovetails a lot with what he does.
Right.
And so anyway, but this camp on the left is one of our oldest camps. We started offering it in 1986, and my grandmother Whittle, I was telling you about. She was a big genealogy buff, and all my life, in fact, there were two things that she would do when we were having our art lesson. We didn't listen to a podcast or stream music, but what we did was she would do two things. She would either read or recite to me poetry, or her favorite when I was really little was to read Joel Chandler Harris in dialect, Brer Rabbit stories.
Okay.
And so I remember that. And then because they were moral tales,
Right.
and that's why she was doing it. And then later, I'm trying to think the other thing she would always talk to me about our lineage, and she had done all the research and everything, and she would always tell us that we were descended from Charlemagne. Now, she didn't tell us how we were descended from Charlemagne, but so I have no idea.
Right.
They usually don't. And then she also said, and you're also descended from Pocahontas. And I
Oh.
thought, well, that's really cool. And well, then later I found out when I was doing a multicultural arts program at Skyview, and I started looking into, we had students that we were having looking into their families of origin, because we wanted them to have kind of a global view of just themselves and the universe and all. And I found out that a lot of the little kids that were going to Lizella had relatives that were Native American.
Hmm.
But these kids were like redheaded gingers with freckles, you know. And I thought, how did that happen? And then I had another little boy who was black, and he kept insisting that he had a grandfather that was a chief
Hmm.
in Texas, and he literally did. He went to visit him, and so I told the kids, I'd say, well, talk to your family and find out your family history, and then at the time, um, uh, Janice Habersham was the media specialist, and she we did this thing with the connect classes, the connections classes, where the Susan Mincy, who was the music teacher, she kind of did this as for like she was going for her specialist degree, and so she created this thing where we all worked as a group, collaborative group, and she did the music of a culture. I would do the art of a culture. The PE teacher would do the sports and the dance of the culture. Janice would pull all the materials, and then the computer teacher would help the kids do research so that they could
Oh,
look up all this stuff. And
okay.
it became a big thing at Skyview. But we found out that these kids, that these redheaded kids, the reason they had those connections is because, and I didn't know this until we were doing this program, when the Highlanders came over to settle in Georgia, they connected with the Cherokee tribe because both both cultures were clan based. So they got along really well.
Hmm.
And one of the Native American leaders, I'm trying to remember his name, but his house was in Indian Springs, and he was Scottish and Native American, but he ended up being a chief. So that was fascinating. And then the little boy that went to Texas to visit his grandpa, when he came back, what he brought was the recipe to share for Cherokee fry bread or Indian fry
Oh,
bread, and he demonstrated it on the TV station, the in-house TV station for the kids. And he brought some. He had made some at home and shared it with his class in my art class.
how about
So
that?
that was really cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I've always been into like this multicultural stuff. But
Right.
Grandma she had done paintings of our family. We have a Whittle family crest, and it's the real thing.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I've got that painting at the studio. But I
Yeah.
decided that it would be fun to have a medieval camp.
Okay.
And because I had friends that were in the SCA, I wasn't in the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism,
Mm.
and they are medieval reenactors. And I met them back in the late '70s when I first started at Creative Alternative, and it was fascinated by what they did. And so when we moved to the Riley Avenue location, we have a setup where we can actually make a throne room and everything. But it's kind of like a Renaissance fair. It's kind of like a
Right.
hands-on
Right.
Renaissance fair for children
Okay.
to learn
Okay.
about that culture
Okay.
and to learn about chivalry,
Hmm.
good manners, why good manners are important,
Right.
and respect for other people, and being a civic-minded community member.
Good. Yeah.
And they have to actually earn not points, 21 points for knighthood, and by the end of the week. And the last day, they know they're going to be having a dubbing ceremony.
Right. Right.
What they don't know, and we had prepped them for it during the week, we tell them all the time, well, back in the day, you always had to be ready wherever you lived, especially if you were a part of a village or a community that had a manor house. You had to always be, we call the studio the manor, not the castle. And then my name is Lady Brooks of Whittle,
Okay.
and I have my coat of arms and everything. But I'm not a queen. I'm just a landed gentry.
Right.
And so what we do is we prep them. We say, you never know when when a royal's going to visit. They don't give you a heads
Right.
up.
Right.
They don't
Right.
text you or call you. They just show
They
up.
show up.
And when
That's
they
right.
show up, they have a lot of people with them, and you have to feed them and everything. So you always have to be prepared. And so part of what they're doing during the whole week is preparing the studio.
Gotcha.
Okay, and so by the time we get to, they have to make a helmet, they have to make a coat of arms, and have a shield that they've made, and it's like poster board spray painted, of course, and then and if they're of a certain level, because they can do this camp more than once, and each time they advance, in their heraldic rank, um, and then and they know they're going to be dubbed. So they think I'm going to do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so what I do is I recruit people, usually from either the theater. I've had people, Dr. Stephen Whisker, who teaches, I think he's still teaching at MGA. He was one of our dubbing royals.
Oh.
And we have local people, people in the theater community come in and do it. It's improvisational
Hmm.
completely. We have like kind of like a skeleton guide agenda that they follow. But anyway, the kids think I'm going to do it, and it's boring, and it's like one of those never ending award
Right,
ceremonies where you
right.
get a certificate because you breathed another day. They're bored, and but in the middle of my initial monologue, which I try to make very boring, all of a sudden a herald will appear and say,
Uh,
"All rise for the king or the queen or whoever the dubbing royal is going to be," and uh, and the kids are like, "What?" And so they descend on the manor house and take over the ceremony, and whoever the dubbing person is says, I've been hearing about good deeds being done in this realm, and I wanted
right,
to come
right.
and celebrate. And so all of a sudden it takes this completely different turn, and the kids are like, I mean, it beats Disneyland as far as I'm concerned.
You have their attention right then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
They're
they
engaged.
work
Yeah.
for that thing. And I've had two children actually attain the right. No, actually, there's three, two boys and a girl that have attained the right to be king or queen because they went through the camp enough times and earned the stuff. And one of them is my son William.
Oh, okay.
So he was the first one, and he came to every camp since about 1990, and he's now has acted as dubbing royal for a couple of
Oh,
them.
good for him. Good for
Yeah,
him.
and so
That's a
and that
fascinating program you've got, you
it's
know.
crazy, but it's so
Yeah.
much fun. And
Yeah.
these guys, the guys in this particular group, this was right before COVID, and I think it was the last one we had. It's probably 2018 or 2019, and these guys were actually this is a couple. They're married,
Mhm.
and they are reenactors with the local shire here or in this area, and they both had attained their level of rank in the SCA because both of them are expert swordsmen, and that
Oh, really?
sword that the king is dubbing that fairy princess with
Right.
is an actual sword.
Oh,
And
wow. How
but
about that?
yeah,
Yeah.
we were hoping maybe that they could do an arms demonstration, but they
Oh,
said,
yeah. Well.
but they didn't. They don't
Yeah.
like to fight each other because they're married, and
Well, we'll definitely include some, information about that. I know I wanna put in the, what I call the show notes, contact information so people can
mhm.
reach out to you about your various programs that you offer. So,
Just tell everybody
yeah.
when you do that my phone number is the only studio phone number, and if they want to talk to me or any of my other artists, they have to leave a message, a
Okay.
voice message,
Okay.
and I will
Alright.
call them back right away.
Okay. Alright. What about this one on the right here?
I have, I was telling you, we went out to California a while back for a wedding,
Mhm.
and the lady, the bride, was marrying my cousin, and she actually is a kind of a punk rocker, and she
Okay.
has a group out there called Lady Divas. And anyway, she has a son who's a graphic designer, and he's involved in a company that does an art it's not really a competition, it's just kind of a showcase. And so
Uh-huh.
in this year the topic was music, and so yeah, I think it was a fundraiser for her band or something. But anyway, so I thought, well, I got to do a piece about Macon. And I thought, but this is in LA. This show is in LA. And I'm like, yeah, people will know who the Allman Brothers are and all that stuff, but
Right, right.
who they really probably will know is Little Richard.
Yeah.
And I always love the fact that his quote, one of his most famous quotes is, "I am the architect of rock and roll."
Right. Yeah.
And so that's why I did this piece. This piece is only about 5 by 7. It's
Oh,
tiny,
okay. Smaller
but
piece. Yeah.
it does have the presence. I think this piece would be Little Richard approved. I'm not sure,
Yeah. Yeah. I think
but I
so
think
too.
it would be.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, so it
Good.
was fun to do, and I sent that out there and to that show, and just happened to have the thing. But you know, there's I think there needs to be a show where the artists and the musicians. I mean, they do have Johnny Malika, Johnny Moe
Yeah, I know my Johnny. Yeah.
started that
Hmm.
it was a 478 show, I think, artist show at Grants, and I did it for 2 years running. But I think that's really the only connection I've ever seen between local artists and local musicians.
Right.
And
Right.
that's pathetic. Well, and I
Yeah.
must say, I thank you to Edward Clark for starting the Riverdale Jazz thing, because
Oh yeah.
we're
Yeah.
plugged into that. We do the kids booth every year so that
Oh,
the kids can hang out with us and do
okay.
face painting and stuff like that.
Yeah. My brother, well, Neil plays with Dr. Clark and
I
them,
know.
and
I hear him every year.
yeah, I told him when the one just happened fairly recently, I said, "Hey, I need to get involved, either have a booth out there and try to sell some of my art or do something." He said, "Oh yeah, we'll hit you up." And I said, "Okay." So we'll see.
Well,
But
my
tell them,
question, I have
go
one
ahead.
question for you.
Yeah, okay.
Who's going to interview you about your art?
Well, that's a good question because I did. I kind of interviewed myself. Well, I didn't really interview myself. Um, I did when I started this over a year ago. I did a quick little video, said, "Hey, I'm starting this podcast. We're going to have stories." And then I said, "Okay, well, let me tell my story." And I told my little story, but I probably need somebody to kind of interview me,
Mhm.
and hopefully, well, Rhonda said she wanted to interview me.
I think that would be
So
awesome.
I think so too. And we'll just have to get it set up. And she and I talked when we were there together about maybe collaborating on a piece together,
Oh,
for our
yeah.
different backgrounds and what I do, what she does. So hopefully we can make that happen. But yeah, maybe she can do that for us and I can get
I
my
think
story
I've
out there.
seen
Yeah.
she's done a few interviews with friends of hers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's been, I think most of the interviews she's been doing have been not, maybe not specifically about their art, but there were some things that she did that were affiliated with the mental health community. Because
Right.
one of the ladies, we have
Right.
Brandy Moan on in our team, who is an arts therapist, and the two of them are involved with a nonprofit that Brandy started called Mind's Eye Connections. And
Okay.
so they've done, I think Wanda did a couple of interviews with folks that they've been affiliated with that. And we're
Okay.
also very connected to Art Space in Ingleside, because
Right.
Casey Trace, who
Yeah.
started that
Yeah.
business, is one of our former instructors. And
Okay.
so,
Yeah. I had interviewed her a while back. So yeah, really
well, she
enjoyed.
was one of the people that launched from my space.
How about that?
Amy McCullough, who had Macon Clay on Second Street, is now in Savannah with another group down there. She's moved
Okay.
on, kind of like Linda did with her clay. And then we had another lady named Bridget Fox, who started the clay program with us after she graduated from the University of Georgia, and she also is in North Carolina and does things in the Penland area.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
we
Wow.
just quietly do our thing.
I know, I know. Well, I want you to talk about a show that you've got coming up.
Oh
That
yeah.
you talk to me about that, and I think it's around, if not on Mother's Day. So talk about that. Share that with us.
The reason we're having it on Mother's Day this year is I usually have a student art show at the end of the year every year. And I'll have pieces from students that are currently taking art or have taken art in our camp series or in our classes over this year. And we do it. The kids that are the advanced kids that are in portfolio usually are the ones that organize it. And I have a young lady this year named Natalie Lemus,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a name to be watching because
Okay.
she's at Howard and is very proficient in music and art, and is also very active in the Scout program. And I'm the mother of two Eagle Scouts,
Oh, wow.
so I'm encouraging her to like whatever she does for her project, and I don't know what she's chosen yet. I don't think it's another year before she chooses her project, but
Okay.
she's going to be designing the show, and we're
Hmm.
going to be showcasing her work, along with some other children that have been in that portfolio program with Ray Schneider and I, and they usually are the featured artists.
Okay.
And then we have a big wall in the main studio area that's the painting wall. It's like we use it as a giant easel because we can do
Okay.
big pieces
Okay.
on there with groups of kids and all that. So that wall is actually kind of a piece of art on its own. But most of the other children's work will be hanging there, and
Okay.
then the teachers will have pieces of their. We're going to be the lesser crowd of the show.
Right.
And,
Right.
but we want to
Right.
be able to show parents and kids that, yeah, we're working artists,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Right.
and we're all artists here. And
Right.
the rule of the artist of the studio is, at our studio we all are connected by art, and our studio, politically and any other thing, religion, whatever, we are Switzerland. And we are here to create art and beauty. We are not here to be divisive and critical.
Right. Right.
And we even have a quote that's hanging up in the studio that says, use your time to be creative, not critical.
I love that. Yeah.
So,
That's wonderful.
yeah.
And that's on Mother's Day, and it will be there at your location on Riley Avenue. Is that correct? Yeah.
And it's
Is there a
also,
time frame for that?
yeah, 2 to 5 p.m.
2 to 5. Okay.
It's a Sunday afternoon, and
Okay.
I'm telling them, I ran it by a couple of my moms because I thought, well, I hope they will come, and they were like, "Oh, that's great. We'll have someplace cool to go."
Well, they
And
can do their mother thing that morning, maybe go to lunch or
yeah,
whatever, and then come out to the art show. Yeah.
but
Perfect.
the other two reasons that are personal to me is that when Keith and I got married, we were married on Mother's Day
Oh, okay.
on May the 9th, and
Okay.
then my birthday and Rhonda's birthday are right after that, the 15th
Okay.
and the 13th. So we're going to be celebrating the kids' art show. We're going to be celebrating the mothers of the kids that are bringing them to the studio. And we're also going to be celebrating my Jubilee birthday.
All
So,
right.
well, we will have
Fantastic.
cake.
Good. Good.
We will
All
definitely
right.
have.
What's the future hold for you and Creative Alternative?
We are moving, I think, fairly rapidly into the realm where, because everybody knows, including me, that I'm not going to be here forever.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is move into a facility that is rental studio space,
Mm-hmm.
that independent contractors, because everybody that's there now is an independent contractor,
Okay.
and we want them to be able to start their businesses there,
Mm-hmm.
stay there if they want to, but
Mm-hmm.
but they can launch from there. They just have to find somebody else that they approve of to
Right.
take over their area.
Gotcha.
And like Terry Cantwell and I, we've been together there teaching music and art since 1986. We're not going anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't mind being the old people in the room.
Okay. Okay.
Because we're mentoring, both of us know we're mentoring these young creatives coming in here
Gotcha.
about, the I'd like to say the proper way to do things. I'm not a control freak, but we try to be very,
Right.
high
Right.
standards.
Right.
And
You have to. You have to.
we like keeping the studio space very quiet
Uh-huh.
because a lot of the kids we work with are on the spectrum, but they're
Right.
very creative.
Right.
And they need to understand what a creative workspace looks like and sounds.
Right. Right.
And so we have to be mindful of other people when they're in their studios doing things. But my dream is for the studio itself for the concept of creative alternative to always be present, and
Mm-hmm.
whether it's there or somewhere else. Technically, if I've had lots of advice over the years people saying that are a lot more real estate savvy than me, saying, you need to sell this, you need the retirement income, and you need to sell this. And I'm like, I will, once I find somebody that understands what's going on here.
Right. Right.
We are a sanctuary for
Yeah.
creatives, and I don't
Yeah.
want that to ever end.
Yeah.
And the business, I mean, the whole nother podcast is the fact that that building is historically accurate. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
historically authentic, and it was built from reclaimed materials from Camp Wheeler by Henry Burns and other folks at that time in 1948 that lived in the Ingleside area. And it was
Okay.
created as the Ingleside Community Club on the property that was originally Crump's Park,
Oh.
where my grandmother used to ride the trolley from downtown Macon, where she lived, to perform opera performances and other events that happened at Crump's Park, because there was a pavilion there that hosted musical performances.
How
And then
about
you
that?
had like lakes, and Brookwood Apartments is on the bulk of the property, which is
Right.
where my family moved when we first moved to Macon. So it's kind of like I'm looking at all this stuff in retrospect, and it's like no mistake that I've been there
Yeah. Yeah.
off and on since 1956,
Yeah.
and that what I'm doing has always been done there.
Yeah.
Henry Burns, when he passed, he donated the park property to the city, and he donated the building property to the Girl Scouts, because his wife, who was actually the first chairman for United Way here, she
Mm-hmm.
was a big supporter of the Girl Scouts, and that's why the Girl Scouts ended up acquiring that building the way they
Okay.
did. And the recycled materials that the building was created out of was from Camp Wheeler. When they dismantled Camp Wheeler, they took the materials from that demolition, and they created Brookwood Apartments out of the barracks materials, and they created the Ingleside Community Club out of the Officers Club materials, the windows and the doors. There are custom made doors and windows in that building, who I'm pretty sure were probably crafted by German war prisoners of war.
Yeah. Now that Wheeler, that's over there where Geico is. The building's at the older building, because
Exactly.
I worked there. I worked in both buildings, but I remember being in the older building, and there's still in certain parts of the parking lot the old foundation of the barracks.
Exactly.
So it was like, oh my gosh,
Well, that's where the
imagine that.
materials
Yeah,
from my
and the
building came,
materials came from there to
and
go
it's
to your
old
building.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's old enough now to be regarded as a historic
historic site
building.
building.
And I
Hmm.
think there should be, last time I checked, there was, with Historic Macon, there was funding for like renovation grants for the exterior.
Okay,
What Keaton and I did, we bought the building because we knew if we didn't, and kind of like take care of it as
right,
best we could afford to,
right,
that it would be demolished, and it would
right,
have probably become something
right.
like the other apartments that are over there
Yeah, yeah.
near us. But we maintained it, and didn't have a
It's a
lot of
great
money.
facility. Yeah, I
It's
mean,
a
it's
great
just
facility.
perfect. Yeah,
I wish we could upgrade the facility a little bit better, but
yeah,
we've done everything we've done there has been paid for by the families of the students that participate, because
right,
they pay tuition. We are not a
right, right.
nonprofit. I
Yeah,
looked into that, and that's just not what we do.
right,
And so I tabled that. I have a couple of people that are interested in purchasing the building that have Mama D, what I call Mama D approval.
right.
We're working on the
Okay,
numbers, and
okay,
I'm in both, but both of them are high creatives, and really want
okay,
to make sure that I
okay.
maintain.
Good.
I don't know if that's going to happen or not before I die, but if it doesn't, then
Hopefully things will work out for the best.
well, we've
Yeah.
also got it set up. The building's paid off, and if something happens to me, William will inherit it.
Oh, okay. Well,
And
I've
so,
I've got some. I call them rapid fire questions. I've got some random questions for you. Number one is, what is your favorite holiday and why?
mm, I think it's Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and partially because we always had when my kids were growing up, we'd always have a big Friendsgiving
Mm,
after Thanksgiving. We do family Thanksgivings with our family, and but it's a close tie with Mother's Day because when Kate and I got married in '82, we got married because we wanted to have those boys,
yeah.
and we knew that we were supposed to be their parents
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
before they were born. So, so I'd say both of those times. But
Okay.
Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday.
Okay. Okay.
It's the only one I really, I'm not the chef.
Okay.
I'm the
Okay.
sous chef and the grocery shopper.
I got you. I
And
got you.
but I don't. That's the only time I really cook.
Yeah. I hear you. All right.
And but
If
yeah,
if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
I think my favorite. If I could choose a superpower, I would like to be able to be. I just would like to pull the entire fine arts community together and just get them to work collectively
Hmm.
to
Not
make
siloed, but
our community the
yeah.
best that it can be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, that would be mine.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite color?
Well, it changes because I'm an
Okay.
artist, but my consistent favorite color has always been purple. In fact, when I got married, I wore lavender.
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
wear white
Yeah.
because number one, it looked terrible on me, but also
Yeah. Yeah.
I just that's my favorite color.
Okay.
And
All right.
it's called. I found out a while ago that it's the color of enchantment.
Oh, okay. Well, describe for us your dream studio, art studio. Unlimited resources. What would it be?
Well, actually, I'm using my dream studio, the Creative Alternative,
Okay. Okay.
and my secondary studio is at my home here in Millersville,
Okay.
and I'm living in my and using my dream studios.
Gotcha.
Um, and the other thing that's really cool, being 50 years into what I'm doing, I have available to me most of the studios of all of the creatives that I know too. So I feel like I'm well taken care of in that department.
I got you. I got you. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been wonderful, and I think you deserve a round of applause. Yeah, I stuck that in there. So, but anyway, yes, hats off to you for all you've done in your long career as an artist, but as an art instructor, and what you do at Creative Alternative. I mean,
Thank you so much.
it's something that's needed in the community, and I'm so grateful that you're in the position that you're in to be able to do what you do. And thank you so much, and thank you so much, for being on the podcast. I mean,
It's
uh,
delightful. I had a great time and I wasn't scared. And when I met, usually I get too nervous about it, but when I met
oh
you at the studio and I thought, this is Neil's brother, I can work
yeah,
with.
you can work with Victor. Yeah, we're all related, we're all
That's
friends,
right.
we're all good
I'm
people. But
just
yeah,
thrilled that there's people like you in Macon. I mean, and you're not the
well,
only one. So I
well,
want to meet all of you guys before I kick.
there you go, there you
So
go. It's
just
been a
come out of the studio.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I want to thank you again, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in and catching this episode of Artist Stories of Middle Georgia. Please, go out to YouTube, watch us there, subscribe to the channel, and give us a thumbs up, and follow us on Facebook at Artist Stories of Middle Georgia as well. But just want to thank you again, and take care, everybody, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye now. Bye, Brooks. Take care.
Go forth and live his art. That's our
That's
motto.
right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Artist Stories of Middle Georgia. We really appreciate our audience and would love to hear about other artist stories you'd like for us to share. Please email us or leave a comment. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Please like and subscribe.